technological progress stopped a while ago. It just stopped dead in its tracks a while ago. And a lot of it is really kind of bound by the laws of physics, because the laws of physics are going to define the upper limit of your computing power. When I see like the same bullshit headlines that I saw back in the 80s being recycled again and again, these technological miracles that never, ever, ever materialize. Just to give you one example, since I was a kid, since I was like a preteen, hearing that, we're just around the corner from a moon colony. There's never going to be a colony on the moon, ever, ever. It's never going to happen. No, nobody's going anywhere, like I said. Because it's just like, where are you going to go? Forget about flat Earth and all this other shit. It's just like, just look at things at face value. Just look at the way things are presented to us. You go to the moon, where are you going to get your water? Where do you get your water? Okay, you're gonna send like giant spaceships, giant rockets filled with water. It's just like this whole fictitious Star Trek nonsense. It's like a carrot, that we're just constantly chasing, because the illusion of progress has to be maintained. The illusion of linear progress has to be maintained at all costs. Look at this thing with like these quote-unquote space missions, the Bezos one with the big flying penis, and then the Virgin flying uterus, Branson. These programs have been in development since the early 2000s, right? And where do they get to? They don't even get to like low Earth orbit. We're talking like 400 miles below low Earth orbit. They just went up into the upper atmosphere, basically. And everybody's like, they went to space. It's like, they didn't go anywhere near space. Anywhere near space. They just went like a little higher, comparatively, than like what the U-2 spy planes was doing in the early 60s. You know what I mean? It's in context. They didn't even go anywhere near space. They didn't go anywhere near where the shuttle would go. And they were still very, very comfortably and safely within Earth's atmosphere. Nowhere near space. So, but where are you gonna go? Nobody's going anywhere. It's like these. It's just never going to happen, because there's no reason for it to happen. Because just again, let's just take everything at face value, everything as it's presented to us, right? So you go to the moon, which has no water, and you're going to die. You go to Mars, which has no water and has no magnetic field and no sunlight, and you're going to die. It's just crazy. It's just absolute insanity. It's just like, there's nowhere to go and there's nothing to do. And you tell me that people are going to like fly out for 6 months or however long it's going to take them to get to Mars? It's absolutely insane. It's pathetic.
Big tech has been held aloft by just billions upon billions of dollars of free money, drug money, unregulated money. Big tech is really a lie. All the concepts that big tech operates on were put in place before anybody working in Silicon Valley today was born. Cell phones, teleconferencing, the internet, wireless. All these ideas came from the 60s and the 70s. All this technology that we think is like the crown of our 21st century creation is all 50, 60, sometimes 70 years old. What are all these people doing then? Tens of thousands of people in Mountain View and Palo Alto. What are they doing? Literally, what are they doing? We don't see any significant new product coming out of big tech, do we? Google makes a ton of money on the cloud, but their consumer products are pretty poor. They spend so much time trying to keep their woke employee pool quiet that they don't focus on their core products anymore. What we really have is that we have tens of thousands of people employed, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people employed in big tech who aren't creating anything real. They're not creating anything of value. This is not like an old man yelling at cloud. This is pretty well documented. It's just basically maintenance, because we're not seeing anything significant come out that's new. You've got to keep this whole illusion of technological progress running, because if you don't, people start to question why they're making all these sacrifices on so many different levels, personal, political, economic, to feed the system that feeds on them and is mostly peopled by people who hate them. And if people start to question that, then the whole thing collapses. And then, like robotics and androids. I mean, robots do exist, but they're automatons. We're never going to see androids ever. Artificial intelligence, again, it's transhumanism. These things are all hoaxes that are promoted by the technocrats. So this is like this pipe dream that they keep pushing. And they'll do these sort of like all these little demonstrations, and they're all just faked just to keep this machine running. Because if people start to question technocracy will collapse. It's fundamentally fake. They're not creating anything new. All these people are making enormous amounts of money for doing next to nothing. The easy money, the interest-free money, and the drug money is all drying up. They're facing this crisis point. I remember going to San Francisco back in the 80s, and it was wonderful. It's just like a warm, lovely place with like really friendly people, and just a great environment, and it was almost like a giant college campus or something, right? And look at it now. And look what it's become. It's on a deeper level. I can talk about all this nuts and bolts stuff, and when I start to get metaphysical and spiritual, California to me, why does it feel so different? Why does it feel cold and hard and unwelcoming? And I think it's because it's become a fundamentally evil place. And the reason being is that it's controlled by fundamentally evil, fake, hoax industries like big tech and Hollywood. The spiritual malaise has gripped California. You can't run a business on blood money without evil affecting your entire enterprise. I really believe that.
We were sold all these science fictional fantasies of
all these technological miracles have been right around the corner my entire life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I can't believe it. It just amazes me. Stories that I remember reading almost verbatim 20, 30, 40 years ago are still being recycled today. It's like Neuralink, right? So that's like Elon Musk is talking about Neuralink. I remember hearing about Neuralink in the early 90s, maybe even earlier. I mean, it's all fake. It's all fake. It really is. I mean, yeah, of course, Hollywood produces films, right? And big tech produces software and so on. But they're not producing anything new. There hasn't been a fresh idea coming out of Hollywood since at least the early 90s. Everything is just a retread. Everything is a sequel or a remake or a comic book. And again, all these industries are built on laundered drug money. So when you wonder why you have a state that gives rise to just all these hideous people, like, Gruesome Newsom and Chesa Bodine in San Francisco, just turning the city over to criminals, and these weird drunk old hags like Nancy Pelosi and so on. I mean, like, you just look at this and it's just like, this is a freak show.
Yeah.
Well, it's because of the spiritual malaise that I think has gripped California. I mean, I used to love California. Like, I still believe in California. I really do. I think there's a lot of potential there to get over this. But it's like, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they were captured. California was colonized by these industries that were propped up by funny money. I anticipated how superhero culture would become mainstream, but I was like, well, where does it go from there? I couldn't figure out where it was going to proceed to other than this whole idea of transhumanism. At the time when I was naive, I thought was real. We've been experimenting on our children for over 30 years now, and the results are disastrous. But because transhumanism isn't real, I think we need to just like reboot everything, because, and not only in our children, but our culture, because, our children, we send them to these horrible schools where they're taught all this nonsense, all this toxic nonsense, and then they get out into the real world and they don't know how to do anything. And this is one of the things when I talk about collapse. I mean, this is something that I've been watching for a long time. A system is only as effective as the people who work inside it. So you're asking me about Ukraine. It's like, well, why is Ukraine such a total clusterfuck? Well, it's because the people in the White House are mostly like these young activist types who, all the older people are terrified of, who don't know how to do anything. Not only do they not know how to do anything, but they're also lazy. They're incredibly lazy. They're lazy and entitled and have no tangible skill set. This is what really worries me. This is so much more prevalent on the coasts than it is, say, in certain like heartland places where it's still like, you go to school to learn things. You don't go to school to study gender theory or something. We are just in so much trouble. And I got to tell you right now, who have no concept of the issues at hand, but are just totally manipulated by Hollywood and big tech. And I know this will sound very pessimistic, but I don't think democracy can survive people who vote to vote for their party. I don't think it can survive that. We need people who are going to get up in the cherry pickers during a hurricane to fix the phone lines or the cable lines or the power line. In positions of power, they don't handle opposition very well. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I got to tell you, I don't see it happening, because look what happened to Build Back Better. Remember Build Back Better? Remember everybody was saying Build Back Better, Build Back Better? What the hell happened to that? You know what I mean? And now people, they might have even alluded to this in the Intercept article. It's like disaster, that never even, everybody's admitting that was just a total left the port, it sank at the docks basically. And why did it sink at the docks? Because the people running the Rockefeller Republican Party, aka the Democrats, people running all these agencies and departments and so on, they're not bright, they're not tough, and they can't deal with stress. And COVID's made them very, very lazy. So I just see nothing but bad luck coming for, it's like musical chairs, right? The Rockefeller Republicans were sort of driven out of the party in the 60s by the whole Goldwater Reagan faction. But then they decided, they were fighting to gain back power. And they said, well, why don't we just take over the Democrats? Because that party's a mess, we'll just take that party over. But they didn't realize that, one of the reasons why the Democratic Party was a mess is that it's not really a party, it's parties, it's sort of this conglomeration of all these different parties with all these people who essentially hate each other, and they just hate middle America worse, you know what I mean? But it gets to the point, they're not going to be able to handle stress. The media is fucked. All these companies have lost half their value in the past year. Netflix has lost 70% of their value in the past year. And Netflix was sort of like the showpiece for woke capitalism, right?
Right.
And they're sinking faster than anyone now. And they put all this woke crap on. People hated it. People left the service in droves. And now they've lost 70% of their value. If you invested in Netflix back a couple of years ago, you've been wiped out. You're gone. Your money is just gone. And God forbid, you have Netflix in your 401k. It's just gone. It's over. So they're raising interest rates again. Millennials and Gen Zers, just, I'm a Gen X. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was very aware, from a very young age. And, I remember what the 70s was like. I remember like government cheese and food stamps and all this kind of stuff. I don't think most people your age or younger have any experience with that. They don't have any experience with like real major want. And I don't know if they're going to be able to deal with it.
Well, people should start armoring up themselves right now. That's what I would say. I mean, we probably have a long tail on this collapse, and you got time to grow some fruit trees and get yourself some land and get out of the city.
Get out of the city. Apps, anybody listening to this, if you're in a city, get out. Any city, get out.
Yeah.
Cities are going to be the absolute worst place to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree.
I mean, it's going to be worse than the 70s. I mean, I remember like the 70s, like what New York and Detroit and Philadelphia and, all these major cities were like, and they're all reverting back to that mean. If you're in a city, get out of the city. I'm not kidding. I'm deadly serious about this. Get out. And, if you can homestead, do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a tough go. It's a tough life.
It is, but having nothing and never being happier is a tougher life, I think. And that's the life that's being presented to us. So
I think that the multipolar world is going to be a good thing. I think that when we're not wasting all our money trying to enforce our will militarily on the entire planet, I think we'll have a lot more money to like fix all the bridges and the subway tunnels and all that good stuff. It's going to take some pain to get there. But I'm not a pessimistic person. I'm always like a long run optimist, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that I'm 55 years old and I've just kind of seen a lot, and I see the cycles. I see how things repeat, and I've studied history. So it's just like nobody can tell you that things are going to be A-okay for the next few years. They're not, particularly in the next 2 years. But on the other end of that, I think things are going to correct themselves, and we're going to sort of return to, I'm not saying we're going to return to the 50s or the 40s or whatever. I think we're going to return to a world more like a multipolar world where people make things at home and grow things at home and not like expect peasants down in El Salvador to grow all their food for them.